Welcome back to Manhwa Heartbeats. Today, we'll be recapping a manhwa called Kidnapped by the Crazy Duke. Don't forget to subscribe, it helps us a lot. Enjoy. The story starts with a lady sitting in a dimly lit room. A man, who has kidnapped her, is feeding her. She begs him to let her go, but he just shakes his head and refuses. She can't understand why he's being so kind to her when he's the one who took her away from her home. It's strange and confusing. Here's this guy who snatched her from enemy territory, and now he's treating her with this weird sort of hospitality. The whole situation just doesn't add up for her. She wakes up after hearing strange noises and looks around, trying to figure out where she is. She hears someone call her Diana, and then another voice says, "Wake up, Diana, you lazy wench." She thinks to herself, Diana? Is that me? She realizes she's in the body of Diana Clare, a character from the novel Asterisk for the Evening Primrose Star. Diana Clare lives a really unhappy life full of disdain. The female lead had fallen asleep while reading the book, so this feels like a dream. But in real life, she's an heiress, so being in this dirty room feels odd, even in a dream. Meanwhile, the head of the Pro-Gen Empire's Rothschild family, and Colonel Noah Rothschild, refuses to let her go despite her pleas. She thinks to herself that he doesn't realize how much she actually enjoys being locked up and doing nothing. She feels a cold shiver and then hears a loud commotion. A maid rushes into the room, angrily shouting her name and asking what time it is. The maid scolds her for being late to breakfast and wonders if she's lost her mind. The female lead thinks this situation is too strange to be just a dream. The maid keeps complaining about her repeated tardiness, and Diana struggles to focus with all the noise. She thinks to herself that she needs some peace to figure things out, so she tells the maid to be quiet. The maid, confused, asks if she heard correctly. Diana repeats her request, adding that the maid should have better hearing. When Diana asks for her name, the maid, sounding frustrated, reveals it. Diana reminds her that she is only a maid and asserts her own noble status. She then demands that the maid take her to her room immediately. The female lead thinks to herself that whether this is a dream or not, she won't put up with it. After being taken to her room, she tells the maid, who is mumbling to herself, to stop talking and get her a pair of scissors. As she cuts her hair, she reflects on how, out of all the characters in the book, she ended up as this unfortunate one. She doesn't care how the old Diana behaved and decides she won't live like that. She plans to go see her father. When the maid leaves to prepare her food, she asks the other maid why she didn't mention that the master had given new orders. The other maid looks confused and asks what she means. Diana explains that she noticed Miss Diana is acting differently. The other maid, surprised, asks if she just called her Miss Diana. While they're talking, Diana's father walks in and asks what they're discussing. He then rushes into her room, angry, and shouts her name. He slams the door open, stops, and stares at her, asking what she's done to her hair. Diana explains that she thought this hairstyle would suit the daughter of a decorated soldier. He tells her that soldiers don't get to enjoy luxuries, and that he had instructed her to appreciate and respect a soldier's discipline. She agrees and says she has spent years recognizing their sacrifices. Admiral Winston Clare, her father, despises and abuses her for reasons she doesn't fully understand. Despite being the son of a marquis, he fought bravely in the navy and earned the title of count. She tells him she wants to spend some time with him since she's his daughter. However, her pride leads her to misjudge the situation, and she ends up locked in a stable for 2 days, freezing and starving. She thinks her father looked at her as if he truly wanted her dead. When maid Vera finally brings her some bread, she says she can have a bite only if she first apologizes and says, "Miss Vera, I'm sorry." The female lead scoffs at Vera, feeling that the maid thinks too highly of herself. Vera gets angry and scolds her, saying she has no shame and asking if she wants to freeze to death. The female lead gives Vera a deathly stare and warns her to be careful, because she'll come after her the moment she gets out. Terrified, Vera runs off, cursing her. The female lead worries that she might die here and knows that, even if she survives, the character Diana will be blamed for her sister's kidnapping and face execution. Celine Claire is the protagonist of the novel, and the female lead understands that Diana is just a minor character, meant to show the father's affection for Celine. Diana's role is expendable, and she's quickly killed off. Knowing this, the female lead decides to use her knowledge of the story to her advantage. Since Celine is well looked after even when kidnapped, she plans to get kidnapped herself. The days pass quickly, and soon it's the day Celine is supposed to be kidnapped. The female lead has everything planned out. She stays out of sight and manages to survive the stables while picking up a chore. When maid Vera throws a rag in her face and orders her to wipe the windows, she reminds Vera that she said she'd come after her first. Vera responds that she'd probably get herself killed before that happens and tells her to start cleaning. The female lead ignores her because her plan is already in motion. The first step is to meet Celine. In the novel, Celine is a decent person. The female lead peeks into Celine's room, but as she does, Celine notices her and asks if she's the one she's been hearing about. When Celine sees her, she asks, "Diana, is that you?" The female lead says she's there to clean the windows. As she works, she wonders why Celine is called the treasure of the household, especially since she's turned down every marriage proposal. She can see why Celine is known as the princess of the empire. The female lead thinks to herself that, since Celine is the protagonist, she should be good and kind. She decides it might be worth asking. She asks Celine if she can come to the party, but Celine laughs and wonders if she's so desperate to go. Diana explains she's never been to a party before and really wants to go. Celine apologizes and says the party is for the upper class, and Diana can't attend. She also mentions that their father would be angry, because he cares about her, and Diana should understand that. The female lead realizes Celine is actually selfish and two-faced, not caring about how her sister is treated. But then Celine comes up with an idea. She tells Diana she can come as her maid and they'll keep it a secret from their father. Diana agrees and gets ready for the party. As she prepares, she feels a pang of jealousy watching Celine enjoy all the attention from the maids. The maids are fawning over Celine, complimenting her stunning gown and exquisite features. Meanwhile, the female lead stands in the corner, feeling like she's just a shadow next to her sister. She thinks that this party must be very important if they're letting her wear nice clothes. But looking at Celine, she realizes that no matter what she wears, she can't match her sister's natural beauty and charm. The female lead feels a deep resentment, thinking that Celine has taken everything from her, beauty, affection, and even life. As they are about to leave for the party, they run into a soldier, who turns out to be Celine's childhood crush. Lieutenant Colonel Geoffrey Gronendal is the son of a duke and the male protagonist of the novel. The female lead wonders where she's heard his name before and suddenly remembers that he led the rescue of her sister. However, she doesn't recall him being her bodyguard. Celine greets him and says she feels safe knowing he will be guarding them. He thanks her for the kind words. When the soldier sees the female lead, he asks who she is. Celine quickly says she's one of their maids. But the soldier remembers that the Claire family has 2 daughters and asks for more details. The female lead goes along with the story, saying she's one of the daughters who has been ill and hasn't been out much, which is why they haven't met. The lieutenant tries to get to know her and asks if she has a partner for the dance. She says no, and he offers to be her partner. The female lead thinks to herself, isn't he supposed to be Celine's childhood crush? She wonders why he's suddenly interested in her, but she agrees to dance with him. Celine watches, feeling jealous as her childhood crush pays attention to her sister. The lieutenant comments on their similar raven-colored hair, finding it an interesting coincidence. As they get into the car heading to the party, the female lead notices fighter jets in the sky and remembers that the story is set during a war in the 19th century. Celine asks the female lead if she has ever been outside before. The female lead says it has been a while. Celine then asks if she's really going to be the lieutenant's partner, suggesting that he only has an interest in charity cases. The female lead replies that she does look a bit helpless. Celine gets angry during their conversation, and the driver suddenly stops the car. They hear gunshots and realize they are being ambushed. The female lead opens the car door to see what's happening and quickly realizes that a kidnapping is underway. Celine asks if she's insane and rushes to close the door. Just then, a strange man gets into the car, tells the driver to start driving, and removes his cap. He looks at the female lead and her sister, smiles, and says, there are two of them. The kidnapping scene unfolds as a strange man, who is the male lead, takes them captive in the car. He asks the driver if there are two of them, and the driver confirms they are both daughters of the admiral. The man then wants to know who the older sister is. Celine answers, saying Diana is the elder sister, although she's actually the younger one. The female lead thinks that Celine's deception is playing right into her plan. The kidnapper realizes that the eldest daughter is lying and they are all surprised by his insight. As the car drives on, it eventually stops and the man tells Celine to get out. Celine jumps out, and when Diana stays inside, Celine asks what she's doing. Diana realizes this must be where Celine is dropped off, and figures she won't need to use her backup plan. Her plan B is to beg and say, "Oh no, take me instead. My father loves me. He can't bear to let me out of the house. Kidnapping me will work better for you." She has prepared a top-notch performance. The man looks at her, intrigued that she hasn't shed a single tear. He asks if she's not worried about her sister. She replies that it's obvious she's in far more danger than her sister, so she doesn't have time to worry about her. The man simply says, "Sure." As she gets a better look at him, she recognizes him as the Duke of the Progen Empire, and the Colonel of the Progen Army, Noah Rothschild. She remembers him from the novel she read, noting his unique hair color, and his exceptionally attractive face, which was irresistible to everyone. She decides to play dumb and asks who he is. He tells her he's her savior. Confused, she wonders what he means. He explains that a kidnapping is scheduled for today, so he needs her to come with him. She thinks to herself that it's clear a kidnapping is happening. He laughs at her reaction. She starts to wonder why he's laughing. Then they notice the police approaching. He says that the police have caught up and explains that the blonde was meant to be the bait. The driver mentions that the police didn't take the bait. As they get cornered while driving, the male lead comments on the uselessness of Bentner cars. The driver tells the male lead that, yes, he has prepared another car, the fastest model available. Even though they are cornered by the police, the male lead instructs the driver to use the side road when he exits. He then warns the female lead to watch her step, making her wonder if he plans to use her as bait as well. The male lead grabs her, holding her hostage, and points a gun at her head. He greets the lieutenant and congratulates him for catching up. The lieutenant asks what he's doing, and the female lead also questions him. He reassures them that he isn't going to shoot. The lieutenant suggests it would be better to take her in one piece. The male lead agrees and decides to carry her away. As they flee, one of the officers informs the lieutenant that they are surrounded. The lieutenant tells them to cease fire since this is now a hostage situation. Noah carries Diana to the new car he had ready. As she gets in, she thinks to herself that this car must be really expensive for this time period. She wonders how long he has been planning this. He tells her to get some sleep, because it will be dawn before they reach their destination. She responds with all right, but then thinks to herself, sleep while I'm getting kidnapped. Sure. Even though things didn't go exactly as she planned, at least she's successfully kidnapped. Noah asks Diana if she's awake, as she just gets up from her nap, noting that she slept well despite the kidnapping. Diana realizes she was so relieved to be out of her miserable house that she let her guard down. She tells herself to act like a proper kidnapped person, and inquires about their location. Noah explains that they are in a place fit for a pretty hostage. Diana thinks, did he just call me pretty? She then comments that her father is likely worried sick. Noah invites her to come along and offers his hand. Diana's new life as a kidnapped person starts as she settles into a cozy bed, feeling surprisingly happy. 4 days have passed since the kidnapping, and Diana is enjoying her new life. She has 3 tasty meals a day, a warm bed, a clean room, and plenty of books to read. The Duke hardly visits, showing little interest. Everything is perfect except that the books are a bit too dense for her liking. Diana needs something easy to read to relax, so she decides to ask Molly, the maid, for some romance novels. She notices how tough Molly looks, but appreciates that she helps with whatever Diana asks. Diana thanks Molly and spots a book titled The Well-Endowed Duke. Curious, she asks Molly about it, and Molly says it belongs to another maid. Once Molly leaves, Diana picks up the book, wondering what it's about. She decides not to judge it by its cover and actually enjoys reading it, falling asleep with it in her hands. When Diana wakes up, she is surprised to find Noah, the Duke, sitting on the bed and reading the book she was reading. He says, "So you're into this sort of thing?" Embarrassed, Diana tries to grab the book from him and ends up falling against his chest. Noah comments on her forwardness, and Diana quickly gets up, asking what he's doing. She's uncomfortable with how close he is. Noah explains that he couldn't resist her because she's too pretty. Then he moves closer to her face, almost touching. He takes off his coat, pulls out his gun, and points it at her. Diana thinks he's crazy as he tells her that her reaction seems odd for someone who's just been kidnapped. It's almost like she's happy. He hands her the gun and tells her to shoot him and run. Our female lead is shocked by Noah's request and wonders if he's lost his mind. After he puts the gun in her hand, she thinks, is this what he wanted to check? To see if I'll run away. He shows her how to use the gun and tells her to shoot him and then escape. Diana wonders if he'll realize she planned this kidnapping if she doesn't shoot him. She tells him she can't shoot anyone. Noah asks if she's a pacifist, and she replies that she's just a normal person. As she runs away, she hopes he will follow her, making her escape easier. As Diana runs from the room, she ends up in the woods. The sun has set, and it's starting to get scary. She wonders why Noah hasn't found her yet and says to herself, looks like it's a perfect day to die in the middle of nowhere. Suddenly, she hears footsteps and aims the gun at Noah. He looks at her and asks if she needs help, and she's not sure if he's serious. Then she sees the gun in his hand and reminds herself to be cautious. Noah tells her that the gun is for protection against wolves in the woods, not for her. He warns her not to run away, but she's already tried that. He takes her back to her room, gives her a blanket and a drink, and explains he wanted to teach her a lesson. He says, if you wander out, you could die from wolves. Diana responds that he could have warned her in a more sensible way instead of letting her experience it herself. Noah says that experience is the best teacher. Diana responds that she's better with words and drops her cup hard. He says he understands and offers to get her anything she wants. Diana says she just needs to sleep. He agrees and leaves her to rest. As she starts to fall asleep, she hears Noah say, "See you tomorrow." She jumps up and asks if he's coming back tomorrow. He asks if she doesn't want him to. Diana notices that his voice sounds sad, and that is acting different from how he did in the novel. She wonders if he enjoys teasing her and seeing her flustered. But she doesn't have to worry about it for a while since Noah doesn't visit her for an entire week. During that time, Diana enjoys having the freedom to do as she pleases. Then, one day, the Duke's personal secretary arrives with a serious look on his face. Vincent Ford, the Duke's personal secretary, informs Diana that her father has refused to negotiate for her release. She remains unfazed, expecting this reaction from her father. Her comment about his response is tinged with sarcasm. Vincent looks at her with interest, noting her lack of tears even after the situation. Diana feels annoyed by this obsession with her emotional state and wonders why it matters so much to everyone. Diana wonders if the Duke asked his secretary to test her resolve by trying to make her cry. When Vincent announces that the Duke will see her soon, she prepares herself to stay composed. Hours go by as she waits, her mind racing with thoughts. Just as she starts to sit on the bed, feeling frustrated, the Duke arrives. With a hint of amusement, he tells her he's ready for the serious conversation they discussed. Diana raises an eyebrow, feeling cautious about his tone. The Duke smiles and comments that her father doesn't seem to want her. She thinks to herself, here we go. If my death helps the Empire, then I'll accept it. She wonders why he seems so eager. He then reassures her that he won't hurt her as long as she cooperates, and offers to explain his sophisticated methods of harm. Diana is curious and asks the Duke to explain what he meant earlier. The Duke smiles and says it's about her intelligence and ability to learn. She tries to downplay it, saying she's just a normal person, but he interrupts her. He points out that most people would have just shot the gun without checking if it was loaded. The Duke chuckles and calls her clever. Then, he becomes serious and asks her one last time if she wants to make a meaningful sacrifice. The Duke asks if she wants to make a meaningful sacrifice. She says yes, but inside she thinks, no, I want to keep living comfortably like this. He then wraps his fur scarf around her neck and says a human is less useful than this scarf. She responds, saying if she were truly useless, he would have killed her already. To her surprise, he says he has no plans to kill her, just like she didn't shoot him when she had the chance. She wonders what he's really up to. He then adds that he kidnapped a princess, not an imposter. She tells the Duke she's not a princess and doesn't have any royal blood. He smiles and asks if she's trying to escape. She admits she did try to run away that day. He explains that the door was unlocked from the start, and she had no real intention of leaving. She tries to cover it up, but he takes her hand and asks her to call his name. She asks if he's really not going to kill her, and he says she actually values her life more than she shows. She thinks to herself that she's been kidnapped by a classy, but crazy person. After that day, she keeps begging him to let her go, but nothing works. Eventually, she tries a new approach and asks if she can go for a walk outside. He agrees and seems pleased. She wonders why he agreed so easily and thinks maybe she's just been too much of a homebody. She goes outside for a walk with the maidservant Molly. As she enjoys the cold air, she sees something glinting in the sun. Recognizing it as a gun, she quickly pulls Molly down to avoid being shot. The lieutenant stands at the door of the Admiral's office, wondering why the Admiral won't negotiate for his daughter's return. He enters the office and asks the Admiral for any updates on Diana Clare, saying that she's still alive despite the refusal to negotiate. The lieutenant tells the Admiral he should be the one to go since Diana was kidnapped on his watch. The Admiral replies that an extraction plan is already underway, with Captain Miller and several other men dispatched. The lieutenant says he should get ready to go if they fail. Meanwhile, after Diana and Molly hit the ground to dodge the bullet, a gun is brought out for protection. Diana thinks to herself, note, never mess with Molly. And judging by her reaction, this doesn't seem to be Noah's doing. A group of armed men in uniform appears from the forest and asks if she's Diana. She says yes and tells them not to shoot Molly, she'll go with them. The men tell her to follow them quietly, but she thinks something doesn't seem right. She doubts the admiral will actually care about fixing his reputation, since he's known for being bad at saving his own people. She notices that the soldier is talking very casually, and doesn't seem to be high rank. She wonders if he's an undercover mercenary sent to kill her. As they head out, the Duke's men spot them and a gunfight breaks out. Diana runs to hide in the forest, still hearing the gunshots. She knows she can't stay in the snow for long, so she climbs a tree to stay hidden. When it gets dark and she finally comes down, she can't find the road back. She wonders who might come to save her and hears a sound in the woods. She looks around, trying to figure out what's happening. Diana Claire finds herself in a scary spot when a pack of wolves appears from the shadows, their eyes shining with hunger. As they close in on her, she thinks, just great, wolves. Maybe I can make them behave like puppies. With a nervous voice, she tells them to sit, but instead, the wolves growl even more fiercely. She realizes she's made things worse and mentally kicks herself for this terrible idea. As the wolves circle around her, Diana takes a step back, her heart racing. One wolf leaps at her, but she manages to dodge its snapping jaws. Surrounded by the pack, she feels trapped and panicked. In a hurry, she picks up a stick from the ground, ready to defend herself. Before she can use it, a loud bang rings out, making the wolves run away into the woods. A rough voice says, "There you are. We can't take you back if you're bitten. The admiral will only pay if you're in one piece." Diana turns and sees a rugged man coming toward her, looking both relieved and scared. The man grabs her arm roughly, grumbling about making sure she's still recognizable when they deliver her. His grip tightens as he starts dragging her away, but Diana isn't going to go quietly. She bites down hard on his hand, making him curse and yell at her. He then tightens his grip around her neck, lifting her off the ground and threatening to break her fingers one by one if she keeps resisting. The man's friends shout at him to hurry up. Furious, he tightens his grip around Diana's neck, but she fights back, scratching his face and kicking him in the leg. Even though she's in pain and scared, she doesn't cry or beg. She silently curses her bad luck. Then she spots a knife at his waist. Determined to stay alive, she gathers her strength and punches him with her free hand. The hit makes him drop her, and as he leans over her, she quickly grabs the knife and slashes at his eye. He screams in pain, calling her every name he can think of. Another voice from the group calls him an idiot for taking so long. The man, now furious, pulls out a second knife from behind his back, ready to finish things. But just as he's about to strike, a gunshot rings out, and he falls on top of Diana. The group of attackers find themselves under fire and panic as they realize they are outnumbered. They are forced to their knees and captured by new enemies. The dead man on top of Diana is heavy, and she struggles to breathe. A calm-faced man approaches her and offers help. With a quick kick, he rolls the body off her, showing a calm exterior that hides his ruthless nature. He tells Diana that he plans to kill all the captors and advises her to close her eyes if she can't handle it. Ignoring the captors' offers of information, he calmly shoots one in the leg and says he'll leave only one alive to tell the story. As the one survivor tries to run, thinking he has a chance, the colonel quickly ends his life with a single shot. He makes it clear that no one will survive to report back, except for one. The others beg for mercy, but the colonel and his men open fire, leaving only one alive to carry the grim message. The colonel then walks over to Diana, who is still shaken from everything. He says, "Looks like you're the only one they were after." Diana, exhausted and scared, nods, realizing she's barely escaped a terrible fate. The man tells Diana that is all she has now and warns her not to run away again. Diana realizes that, in this world, she has no one to trust and nowhere to go. She's truly alone. As she cries, she accepts that is right. Without him, she would have been killed. Even though his words seem uncertain, they give her a strange sense of comfort as he places a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Diana asks him what he wants from her. He replies that he just wants her to stay with him because it's dangerous outside. She asks if that's all he wants, and he seems puzzled, wondering if she expects something more. Diana's mind is filled with confusion about what he really wants from her. Diana offers him money, but he turns it down, saying he can take care of that himself. Her mind races, trying to understand his motives. She suggests that maybe he wants something more from her, like her body. He straightforwardly confirms that he wants all of her. Shocked, she responds that it's not like they're getting married. He teasingly asks if she'd agree if they did get married, which makes her note his strange obsession. Diana says that marriage needs love, implying he would need to love her. He challenges this by saying he does love her, which surprises her with its bluntness. She questions if he's serious, feeling uneasy about his directness. He reassures her that he's not lying and says that she seems sincere in what she says, but he wants to see proof. Frustrated, Diana thinks he should just drop the subject. But then he suddenly gives her a light kiss on the lips. She turns away, feeling a mix of emotions. He asks how she feels, lifts her up, and tells his soldiers to clean up the mess while he heads back. Diana feels embarrassed as she realizes the soldiers have seen everything. He tells her he'll do whatever she wants, mentioning her earlier request for the little pig. Diana internally mocks the situation, wondering what he'd say if she agreed to let him have all of her. She says their kiss wasn't real, and he teases her, saying he can show her what a real kiss is like. She turns him down, feeling embarrassed. He reminds Diana that she said she loves him, and she explains it was just because they were in public. He suggests they continue in the bedroom, making her question his true intentions. As he carries her, he asks her to wrap her arms around him and comments on how warm and fit he feels, despite his delicate looks. He wishes her sweet dreams as she drifts off to sleep. When Diana wakes up, she finds herself nestled in a large, cozy bed, wrapped in soft, clean sheets. She feels refreshed and comfortable, with her wounds carefully bandaged. The man who had cared for her during her unconscious state had clearly taken great care, intending to her injuries. Diana is slightly surprised to discover that her clothes have been changed, but the man explains with a chuckle that he only handled the bandaging. He makes a light-hearted joke about their sudden intimacy, which makes Diana feel a mix of annoyance and reluctant gratitude. In her thoughts, Diana feels a tinge of frustration over his casual attitude, yet she can't deny a sense of appreciation for his efforts. As she slowly regains full consciousness, the man calls out to her, reminding her of his promise to show her what a real kiss is like. His playful tone contrasts with the seriousness of their situation, adding a layer of complexity to their interactions. Meanwhile, back at the castle, the lieutenant is busy debriefing the extraction team. His focus is on ensuring that everything went according to plan, and that their mission was successful. As the meeting concludes, another princess approaches him. She greets him warmly, but quickly shifts the conversation to more pressing matters. She informs him that their father, the king, is expected to return soon, which brings a sense of urgency to their discussions. The princess then expresses her concern for Diana, mentioning the precarious situation her sister is in. Her worry is evident as she talks about Diana's condition and the implications of the recent events. The lieutenant listens attentively, understanding the gravity of the situation and the emotional weight it carries for the princess. He acknowledges her concerns, knowing that their next steps will be crucial in addressing both Diana's well-being and the unfolding challenges they face. The lieutenant reassures her, saying he will make sure Diana is safe. The princess is worried about his plan to face Colonel Rothschild, who is known for being reckless and skilled with a sniper rifle. He brushes off her worries, focusing on Diana's safety. The princess is surprised by how familiar he sounds when talking about Diana and tells him not to go, because it's too dangerous. He insists he's doing it for her, referring to Diana as Miss Claire. In the dimly lit office, Colonel Rothschild sits alone, thinking about the recent kidnapping. His mind keeps going back to Gutierrez, the one who caused all the trouble. The colonel feels a strange sense of victory, as if he has won a special prize. He tells himself that he secured something priceless and believes that by saving her first, she owes him. Vincent, Rothschild's assistant, steps into the room, bringing a momentary shift in the conversation. Rothschild's mind moves from the immediate problem to more personal considerations. Curious, he asks Vincent if he has ever been in a relationship. Vincent's response, though somewhat vague, makes Rothschild reflect on his own lack of experience in such matters. Rothschild, realizing he himself isn't very experienced in relationships, decides to set that topic aside for now. Shifting his focus back to the task at hand, Rothschild inquires about how to ensure that the woman won't try to escape. Vincent reassures him that it would be impossible for her to leave, given their current location's isolation. The area is surrounded by dense forests, and is a good 2-hour drive from the nearest city, which makes any attempt at escape highly impractical. Annoyed by what he perceives as Vincent's obvious statement, Rothschild snaps at him, calling him an idiot. He clarifies that he already knows about the physical barriers surrounding their location. What he really wants to understand is how to make the woman stay willingly, not just because she can't physically leave. Rothschild's frustration is evident as he seeks a more nuanced approach to their situation. Vincent, trying to be helpful, suggests that one way to make her feel more inclined to stay willingly might be through thoughtful gestures, like giving gifts. He explains that women often appreciate small tokens of affection, such as flowers, which can make them feel valued and cared for. Rothschild, taking Vincent's suggestion seriously, immediately asks him to find some flowers. Despite Vincent's concerns about the difficulty of obtaining flowers during the spring, Rothschild remains confident. He believes Vincent can manage it, showing unwavering faith in his assistant's abilities. Vincent, although worried about the challenge, sets off with the task, hoping to find the right flowers that could help improve the situation and make their guest feel more at ease. Vincent suggests that daily visits and thoughtful gifts might help improve the situation. He mentions that women often appreciate small gestures like flowers, which can show attention and care. Rothschild, determined to make a positive impression, eagerly asks Vincent where he can find flowers. Vincent nods and quickly leaves the office, setting off on his mission to find the perfect flowers for Rothschild's plan. Meanwhile, in another part of the mansion, the princess is relaxing in the bathtub, reflecting on the events of the day. She feels a mix of emotions as she thinks about the various interactions and gifts she's received. A maid enters the room and notices a small butterfly-shaped scar on the princess's back. The maid makes a polite comment about the scar, but continues with her tasks, leaving the princess alone with her thoughts. After finishing her bath, the princess steps out and is greeted by Vincent, who has returned with a gift from the Duke. He presents a beautifully crafted dress that the Duke specifically ordered just for her. The princess looks at the dress with a sense of disappointment. She asks Vincent, rather bluntly, what the point of the gift is, especially since she doesn't have a mirror to see how it looks or any occasion to wear it. Vincent tries to explain that the room she is in doesn't have mirrors, because it's used as a war room, a place where various artifacts are stored. He adds that it's meant to keep the room practical and secure. The princess, still feeling unimpressed, makes a sarcastic comment, saying she'll just treat the dress as another artifact among the many stored in the room. Despite Vincent's efforts to explain the situation and the Duke's intentions, the princess remains unhappy with the gift and the circumstances. She feels a bit disheartened, not fully appreciating the gesture given the lack of personal touches and the practicality of the room she's in. Vincent, not discouraged, reminds her that she should appreciate the Duke's generosity for giving her such a nice gift. As he leaves, he mentions he'll tell the Duke about her complaints. Later, the Duke visits the princess and says he heard she was feeling down. She quickly denies being sad, but the Duke tells her they'll be going out that night, giving her a chance to wear the dress. She says she needs to do her hair, and the Duke assures her a maid will take care of it before he leaves, promising to meet her outside. The maid helps her, noting she has new earrings. Despite her hesitation, the princess lets the maid pierce her ears. When she comes out, the Duke compliments her, saying she looks lovely in everything, even simple nightgowns. They head out in a carriage, with the Duke calling it their first date and silently wishing for things to be more normal. Back at Diana's real home, her sister, Princess Clara, stands by the window, staring at the lieutenant in the distance. She can't stop thinking about his words, "I'm doing this for you." The weight of his decision feels heavy on her heart. With a sudden burst of determination, she runs to her father's office. She bursts into the grand room, begging the king to stop the lieutenant from putting his life at risk. She's terrified for his safety and desperate to keep him from a tragic fate. The king listens to Clara's worries with a serious expression on his face. He tells her that he has already spoken to the commander about the situation, but he confesses that the commander, who also happens to be his father, usually doesn't pay much attention to his son's concerns or actions. The king acknowledges that it's a difficult situation, and admits he doesn't have high hopes of changing his father's mind. Despite this, he reassures Clara that he will make another effort to intervene and try to stop the lieutenant from risking his life. Determined to take matters into his own hands, the king decides he must act quickly. He arranges for a carriage to take him to the residence of the Prime Minister, who is also the commander. Before leaving, he gives Clara a comforting promise that he will return as soon as he can, hoping to prevent the lieutenant from going on a dangerous mission to rescue his daughter, Anziana. The ride to the Prime Minister's residence is filled with tension, with the king's mind racing as he contemplates how he can persuade his father to cancel the mission. As the carriage clatters down the road, the king's thoughts are consumed with strategies and possible arguments he could use. He knows convincing his father will be no easy task, but he is resolute. The urgency of the situation presses on him, and he feels the weight of responsibility for both his daughter and the lieutenant. As he approaches the Prime Minister's residence, he steels himself for the difficult conversation ahead, hoping that he can make a compelling case to change his father's decision. When the king arrives, he gets some unexpected news. The Prime Minister has already given his approval for the lieutenant's mission and allowed him to proceed. The king realizes that trying to change his father's mind is pointless. At the court, the Prime Minister suggests moving on to other matters, seeing the issue as settled. Disappointed but resigned, the king accepts the decision, knowing the lieutenant is now committed to the risky task. Meanwhile, inside the carriage with Diana and the colonel is unusually excited. He announces that this is their first date, his voice showing a mix of excitement and disbelief, as if he's never been on a date before. Diana watches him closely, noticing how odd it is that he seems to be trying to figure out how she feels about the situation. As they keep traveling, the colonel's curiosity gets the best of him. He leans in closer to his assistant and whispers, asking if he knows what usually happens on dates. The assistant, a bit surprised, admits it's been a while since he's been on a date himself. The colonel, feeling a bit unsure, says he'd prefer if the assistant didn't whisper in his ear, as it makes him feel even more nervous about the whole thing. The carriage finally stops at their destination, and the colonel tells the driver to leave, giving him a quick dismissal. As the driver drives away, Diana notices the vibrant fireworks lighting up the sky and asks the colonel if today is some kind of holiday. The colonel explains that the fireworks are for the coronation of the progenitor emperor, who has been on the throne for 30 years. He then asks Diana if she can see the fireworks well, suggesting she might want to sit on his shoulders since she's small and might have trouble seeing from where they are. Diana, a bit surprised by the suggestion, declines, saying she doesn't want to be seen sitting on his shoulders. The colonel then asks if she has ever seen fireworks before, and she says she has. She turns the question back to him, asking if he has seen fireworks before. The colonel says he has seen many fireworks during battles, where the explosions and flashes were similar to the colorful displays they're watching now. In her mind, Diana thinks about what the colonel said. She remembers that even though he is noble, he has been in many battles, which might explain his unusual personality and the strange way he sees things. She tells him that those experiences must have been really scary for him. He responds with a hint of curiosity, asking if she's worried about him. Feeling the conversation getting a bit uncomfortable, Diana quickly changes the topic. She asks where they're going next. The colonel tells her they are heading to his manor, which surprises Diana. She asks if he has more than one house, since she didn't know about this one even though they've been working together for a while. The colonel, almost proudly, says that he has several places to live, a castle, a mansion, and a vacation home. Diana is impressed and comments that he must be very rich. In her mind, she thinks about how grand he looks, even with his strange behavior. She muses that his wealth should keep him happy. The colonel's mind drifts a bit as he thinks about her words. He decides he'll use all this wealth once they are married. He then asks Diana if she really wants to marry him. Diana responds with a playful comment about how anyone would want to marry a rich husband, because it means she could enjoy luxuries like eating steaks every day. She says she's quite materialistic, which makes the colonel smile. The colonel, taking her response in stride, says it looks like he's meant to be a husband to a princess. He then tells her they will meet with the archbishop tomorrow to exchange their vows. He seems excited about the idea. Diana, on the other hand, feels overwhelmed by the thought of exchanging vows so quickly, especially after a night of fireworks and a sudden proposal. The colonel says that his princess has a romantic side and tells her he wants them to take their vows the next day. Diana thinks it's too fast, feeling that she can only act this way while they are dating. He reassures her, saying they will get married eventually, but not tomorrow. He adds that if she marries him, he'll buy her steaks every day and get her all the clothes she wants. Diana starts to imagine different scenarios in her mind, worrying about what might happen if she doesn't tell him she loves him. She's concerned he might react harshly if she doesn't meet his expectations. Her thoughts are interrupted when he suddenly picks a shiny yellow flower from the side of the road. He hands it to her, saying he got it for her because he couldn't find any other flowers while they were traveling. As Diana holds the flower, he gently tucks it behind her ear. He explains that this flower represents an answer to love. Diana feels a pang of sadness, wondering if all this might just be a show. Despite her doubts, she thanks him for the thoughtful gesture. He then comments on how pretty she looks with the flower in her hair, and she can't help but blush a little. He gives her more flowers, and she thanks him again, trying to show her appreciation. He notices that she rarely smiles and asks her why. Diana explains that while she does smile, she doesn't show many facial expressions. She reassures him that she is happy, but she feels they still need time to get to know each other better. The lieutenant, on the other hand, believes they are a perfect match. He tells her to get some rest, so they can exchange vows the next day. Diana is taken aback by his eagerness, and she wonders if he might be misunderstanding her reluctance. She worries that he might think her hesitation is just part of being a hostage, rather than her genuine feelings. In her mind, she compares this situation to the dangerous life she led back in Belfort, feeling a mix of anxiety and confusion. Seeing how tired Diana is from walking, the lieutenant offers his arm for her to hold. She decides to tell him that she wants to cancel the marriage. He agrees and asks where his home is. Diana finds out it's only about a 5-minute drive away. She thinks it's strange that someone who seems so tough could have such a nice home. When they finally get to his home, he introduces her to everyone as his fiancée. His friends and the people outside give them a warm welcome. He tells her not to be shy and to get some rest. Diana can't help but think about how little they actually know about each other. The butler comes over and suggests preparing a shared room for them. The lieutenant quickly says they aren't ready for that yet, even though they've kissed and said "I love you." He also teases her by bringing up a moment when she jumped on him, which makes her blush and try to hush him. He tells her she looks pretty with her flushed cheeks and takes her to her room, promising to see her the next day. Once inside, she sits down, relieved to have avoided an awkward situation. She looks at the flowers for a bit before deciding to take a shower. While Diana is cleaning up, she hears a knock on the door. She invites whoever it is to come in and is surprised to see the lieutenant himself. He tells her it's midnight and warns that she might catch a cold if she stays like this. She questions him, saying it's not morning yet. He replies that he will see her in the morning. If you're eager for the next chapter, drop a comment expressing your interest in a part 2. Don't forget to subscribe and ensure to hit the notification bell to stay updated. Until next time.